Welcome to Falcons Drip, your go-to source for Falcons news and draft coverage. I'm Thon Ray, founder and voice of Falcons Drip.
Welcome back, everybody, to Falcons Drip Radio. Today, I'm joined by my co-host, as always, and back on the podcast for a second time, we have John Vogel. And today, we're going to go over the Falcons draft picks. So I know we just talked about Zach Harrison, and I talked about, when Atlanta drafted him, I was like, whoa, like, this makes so much sense. Like, why was I not thinking of that? Same thing. Go to round 4, pick 11. I'm thinking, okay, who are they going to take here? Maybe another defensive end, maybe. And then all of a sudden reads the card, Clark Phillips. And I was like, how is he still here? Like, at one point, this guy was getting talked about, was getting some late first round buzz and talked about frequently in the second round. And I was just like, an incredible pick.
Absolutely. And the thing with Clark is, like, he stands out in so many different ways. So the first thing that I remember from him at Utah was he plays bigger than 5'9". When I found out he was 5'9", I was shocked because he played on the boundary at Utah. There are some guys that you see that are small that play bigger. I think Zay Flowers in this class is one of those guys. Asante Samuel Jr. with the Chargers is another one of those guys. But they play bigger than they actually are. And he is an athletic monster. He didn't test as well as some people I think were expecting because, he looks like an athletic freak on the field. I think wasn't he on Bruce Feldman's freak list too?
I'm not sure.
I want to say he was. I could be wrong about that. Don't quote me. But he's athletic as all get out. And so you got a guy that he's definitely going to end up being a nickel, right? He's definitely a shoe-in nickel type guy, which, Falcons added Mike Hughes this year, which is fine. But you got a young guy now too. And then the other thing is you get to find out, can this guy play on the boundary at the next level? And if he can, you got a late first round talent in the fourth round. That's insane. And the Chargers did this with Asante Samuel Jr. When they took him in the second round, I think, in 2021, right? I was like, what are they doing? He's a slot. What are you doing taking a slot that high with all the corners on the board, blah, blah. Oh, I was wrong. Big time. That guy can play on the boundary. And I kind of wonder I think the same thing about Clark. The other thing is not only is he a ball hawk, the guy had 3 pick sixes last year, Utah?
Yeah.
The guy, he's a tackler. He wants to hit people. He's got a hit stick to him. So at 5'9", when you're 185 and you got a hit stick and you play like you're 200, man, that's the type of dog that I want in my secondary. And I'm going to keep you as close to the box as I can while I can. But I'm comfortable with you going down the field with receivers. I really am.
You mentioned a lot of pick sixes. The only guy who's better about getting pick sixes in this draft is Emmanuel Forbes. And you also mentioned Asante Samuel Jr. His father had a couple of good, solid seasons with the Falcons at the tail end of his career.
Well, he had a couple really good years. He led the league in interceptions with New England, I think in that 2007 undefeated run. And then he goes and joins. No. That was where he was. Yeah, because I was about to say he went to did he go to the Eagles? Samuel went to the Eagles with Nabadi Asamoah, right? Yeah, so he very successful, very long successful NFL career, which is great. I think Clark and Asante Samuel Jr. are very similar players. I think that Clark's more physical than Asante Samuel Jr. is, and I think that spells a lot of potential for his future NFL career. I think that if you get a guy that can play on the boundary, you got an absolute steal here.
Absolutely. And honestly, even if he's just a nickel player, just the way he plays, having a guy like that who can be on the field is just, he's nasty. He went out and he went toe-to-toe with Drake London 2 years ago.
Yep. Yes, he did.
And he's literally Drake's got 6 inches on him.
More than that. I think Drake's 6'5", so 7-8 inches almost.
Yeah, which is insane for him to be able to lock him down, especially with all that size advantage. And his straight line speed isn't much quicker. If any. It's pretty similar. He's not gonna absolutely fly around the field and beat him off the brakes off him if they were to do like a 40-yard dash.
Yeah, I think Clark ran a 4.59 at the combine.
Yeah.
Which that's what people, I think that's probably why he slipped to the fourth round, was the 4.59. But
I think it was a 4.51 official, I think. I think it was like a 4.59 or something like that. And then I think when the official came out, I think it was like a 4.51. But
it definitely looks quicker on tape.
No, that's what I was gonna say, was there are certain guys that play faster in pads than others.
Mm-hmm.
You know? And that's kind of one of the things about the underwear Olympics that you just kind of take as a grain of salt. The combine really only just backs up everything that you see on tape. If there's something that doesn't look right, you go back to the tape. You know, it's not meant to be something that you look at and go, oh, he didn't test like I thought he would, so that's going to be a problem. No, it's not like that at all. It's more of a, okay, let's recheck this. Let's look at this again. And then, you know, maybe you have a couple of guys that are under him that you're looking at as well that tested better than him. You go back and you look at them too. You got 2 months to do it. You know, you got plenty of time. So
yeah, you always gotta have those other guys behind him. So if one guy tests bad, double check their film to see if they look faster, and just look at the two comparatively and see if there's any differences and if you can tell. And if not, maybe take that guy with the slower 40 time.
Clark Phillips was, I think, he was like the 20th defensive back taken off the board. There were not 20 defensive backs better than him.
No, not at all. And there were a lot of really good defensive backs in this class, but I thought he was a top 10 DB period across the board, just from what I saw on tape. I think he tested out as a day 2 guy for me, a high day 2 is where he graded, but yeah, he's solid, man. And you know, I think the thing too that you have to look at is you got AJ Terrell and Jeff Okudah that are penciled in on the boundary. If this guy can play on the boundary, I'm going to slide Okudah inside and play him as a nickel. You know what I'm saying? And now I've got size inside. So that's how I kind of look at it. There's a lot of versatility that you can do with it, and it's all going to come down to how these guys perform in camp. So
yeah, absolutely. And, you know, talking about size inside, we went out in the 7th round, their pick 224. We took DeMarco Helms from Alabama. What do you know about DeMarco here?
So DeMarco got on my radar this year against Tennessee.
got on a lot of people's radar. I actually think that was to our benefit.
Yes. Yeah, it helped him slip, because I think before that most people were thinking he was going to be a much higher day 3 pick. So basically what happened against Tennessee was he got torched 4 times by Jalen Hyatt. And every single time they got him in a rotation. So basically Saban defenses have a lot of rotation to motion. And so Tennessee and Josh Heupel, that group, they put together this game plan where they attacked DeMarco Helms, basically. And so Helms was in this really bad spot where he had this guy that runs a 4.40 motioning across, and he had to follow him and then go down the field with him, and there was no matchup for that. And Hyatt went for 5 touchdowns in that game. Tennessee wins. And that was an insanely, absolutely crazy game. It was so much fun to watch. But Helms kind of got on the radar because on the bad side, negatively, because he was the recipient of being torched, essentially. But outside of that, no, he was a very solid tackler. I believe he was the leading tackler Alabama had last year in that defense. And when you look at a safety, this was one of the things that I came into the combine in 2022 when I went down there. That was my first time I did the combine. No, 21. Is that right? No, 22. 22 is right, because 23 combine was this year. So 22 was my first combine I ever did. And there were that was the first time I really met a lot of different NFL personnel people.
Mm-hmm.
Because when you go to the Indianapolis that week, it's awesome. It doesn't matter what bar you go to, you're going to run into people that work in the league. Like that is NFL Central for a week, and it's amazing. They're everywhere. And so one of the people that I ran into, I think it was a Sunday. So the last day of the combine, the DBs were on the field, was Trent Baalke, who's general manager of the Jacksonville Jaguars. Baalke, his claim to fame basically was he was a director of player personnel for the San Francisco 49ers with John Lynch and helped turn that team around. They sucked, if y'all remember, back in the early 2010s.
Mm-hmm.
And it was Baalke, and Baalke is one of the best talent evaluators in the league, period. And Lynch's work that turned that team around. And so my question to Trent when I met him was not, hey, who you guys taking with the first overall pick? Because they had the first pick. And I told him, I said, I'm not going to ask you who can take first. And he goes, I don't even know who I'm taking first yet. But it was so I understand that you're one of the best talent evaluators in the league. You know, I've heard the work that you've done and how you can pick up on things. So one of the things I really struggle with is safety. And he gave me 5 things, the 5 top traits that he has. So he looks at it as safety. It's range, football instinct's number 1. Instincts and IQ. That's number 1. After that, it's range, tackling, ball skills, and man coverage ability. He hits a lot of those. Mm-hmm. He's very instinctive. He knows where to be, usually at the right place, right time. The Tennessee game was really an anomaly. And because, they were dealing with stuff that they hadn't really ever seen before. Tennessee gave them things that they hadn't shown all year. And really, the first 2 years, hype was there. And
there was only really one team that handled Tennessee's offense well, and that was Georgia, with their big, physical, speedy DBs, with Kamari Laster, Chris Smith, all NFL talents.
Kirby Smart, Saban type defenses, right? So they looked at what Tennessee did to Saban's defense and said, "Oh, we can't do that," you know. But
he hits most of those. You know, he great man on tight ends and running backs.
Mm-hmm.
Very instinctive. Physical is one of the most physical players in this draft.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he's a great tackler, and he's really good in pursuit. Very good range. Tested relatively well, if I remember correctly. He was a sub 4.5, wasn't he? It was 4.4 something is what he ran.
4.57.
Oh, was it 4.57? I thought for some reason I thought he was under a 4.5, but
I think that's what people expected him to run.
But he looks like he's running 4.4 on the field.
Yeah,
but that's a steal in the 7th round. He doesn't have to do too much as a 7th round pick. 7th round pick is basically when you got draft picks left, you start taking guys that you're going to sign off the street. And the fact that he was there is really good for the Falcons. I think he's going to work out well.
He like kind of when I look at him, even if like that speed stands right, and he's not fast enough to be a deep third guy, deep half guy, deep middle, he can still be a box safety, and he can still come in and be a third safety, a big nickel, extra linebacker type player. Maybe not in 2023, but that's like kind of the hope for him. And if you can get that in the 7th round, a good rotational piece, that's a great pickup.
And it's funny because he kind of reminds me of Mark Barron, if you remember him. 2012 first round pick with the Rams. The Rams tried to play him at safety, and he was about to wash up out of the league. They cut him, I think. He didn't even make it to the end of his first round deal. He signs with Tampa Bay. They put him down in the box and list him as a linebacker, and all of a sudden he's, Pro Bowl caliber player.
Who's the Cardinals player they did that with too?
Deion Buchanan.
Yeah, Buchanan. Because he ended up in Atlanta for a little bit.
Yeah, they're very similar players, in their skill set and how you would utilize them. So that's kind of what I see with Helms. And I think that that's probably another one of those picks that you're looking at going, his value is up here. Like, this is where you probably should have gone. You got him down here in the 7th.
Yeah. Absolutely. And, worst case too, great special teams player.
Mm-hmm.
So
Absolutely.
that's like his floor.
100%. And out of the 7th round, what you're usually expecting year one is like a special teams contributor. If not, maybe a practice squad guy at the very worst.
It's the physicality that he brings and the attitude and the mentality. Like him and Clark Phillips both made the defense and the DB room significantly tougher just by having them around.
Yeah, I think physicality is such an underrated trait in the back end, especially now, because think about it, where wide receivers are essentially running backs that just catch the ball farther down the field now. Everything is so predicated on run after catch at this point. When you got guys like Helms and Phillips they want to take kill shots on dudes, they want to make tackles, they want it, that physicality, that's always super valuable to have on your back end.
Yeah, absolutely. So I love that pickup. And then for me, the pick right after was Jovaughn Gwyn, the offensive lineman. What were your? Let's let you dive into him a little bit and kind of what you saw from him before the draft.
Yeah, so Gwyn was a guy that went to the NFLPA Bowl, multiple year starter, I think 3 or 4 year starter at South Carolina. Played a bunch of different positions, if I remember correctly, as well. He wasn't just a guard there. I think he played some tackle, and I may have slotted in at center a little bit. So you got to get. So we talk about versatility on the offensive line. The reason why that's so important is because when you are going in with your game day active roster, you really have to have. You've only got 8 guys, sometimes 7, that you're going into an active roster and that game day roster with. Once you take your 53 man, you shrink it down to 48. So you can really only go in with 7, 8 at top. So you got to have guys. They're going to be depth players that can play multiple positions because you don't know when that injury is going to come up when they have to come into the game. So that's kind of where Gwyn is to me. I think they've actually got him penciled in. Our lads has him penciled in as a center, which is very interesting, a backup center. But he goes to the NFLPA Bowl. He gets the call up. He goes to the Senior Bowl as an injury replacement. I forget who he replaced, but somebody got hurt. So he ends up at the Senior Bowl too. And there was he was noticeable as soon as he got on there. Now, the issue with him is he's a little bit smaller, so he doesn't have a lot of the length that you're typically looking for. That's why he's in the 7th round. And I think his anchor sometimes was a little bit of an issue. There's, you want guys that are going to, when they get into their anchor, when they set, and they're, especially in pass protection, that's really when you use your anchor. When you get to that point, you don't want to see a lot of retreat, giving up ground, having to chop your feet, to maintain your position, where you're losing ground. They're going to chop their feet, of course, but you don't want to see him losing a lot of ground. And there were some times against bigger defenders where he really struggled with that, where he would drop and the pocket would condense. And so that's some of the things that you're going to be working on with him is how he can better utilize leverage. When you're smaller, a lot of times the defensive linemen that you're going up against, they're bigger than you, they're taller, which means that you have a natural leverage advantage. So if they can teach him to use his leverage better, he's going to be a solid rotational guy, as a backup. So I like that potential for him. Obviously 7th round, I don't know if he makes that kind of an impact ever on their Falcons roster, but it's definitely worth the shot at it, especially with the fact that I think Drew Dahlman is supposed to be the center on this team. He's probably the weak point, which is crazy when you think about it, but he's the weakest point on that offensive line. And you don't have a lot of depth behind him. Go get this guy, pick him up, draft him so you don't have to sign him and compete with all these other teams. There was a lot of interest. I think 32 teams had a PFA on him. So, yeah, that's a good pick. I think when you can get a guy in the 7th round, you got that all 32 teams are interested in. That's a good pickup.
And, they came out and Dwayne Ledford, so the Falcons line coach, who, all Falcons fans are praising this guy. I mean, he's one of the best line coaches in the NFL, just showing what he's done with this offensive line. He came out and specifically said he wanted Gwyn on the team, and said that he loved his toughness, he loved his attitude, and he, even if he doesn't start, he's going to push everybody else in the room to be better. So I mean, when I learned that, because when they first drafted him, I was like, why are they doing that? Why are they? And once because I didn't know anything about him, and then once I started doing more research and looking into it, I was like, whoa, like now I mean, if Ledford is pushing for him, that's a no brainer.
One of the guy that
you go ahead.
The guy that runs the NFLPA Bowls, Rick Saratella, and he was one of his favorites in this class, and I think that was a lot of it was the toughness and the attitude that he had. So he spoke very highly of him. I really respect a lot of what Rick has to say about people. He really liked that guy, so I think that means a lot of something.
Yeah, what I was gonna say is, I think he's a great player. He's obviously an experienced vet, but if you're that type of guy who's I forgot what I was going to say. My brain's not working anymore.
All good. I was going to say, like, when I watch him, I can't help but think of Jason Kelsey. And when Kelsey came into the league, I mean, he was 6'3", I believe, 280, like 280, 285, and just he's just tough, gritty player. And if Gwyn can turn around and put on, however much more weight and more strength and bulk, there's no reason why he can't be. And they, Ledford talked about how smart he is, and he was making calls at the guard position, and he said that he's definitely ready to take on more calls as the center. So, like, if worst case scenario he comes in and he's pushing the rest of the offensive lineman, and he's a backup guy who can play any guard spot or center, like, that's an incredible 7th round pick.
Yeah, absolutely. He's ambidextrous as well. I'm pretty sure I remember seeing him. He started games 1 year at left guard, started games 1 year at right guard. So he's bounced around the league. I mean, the line, and done a bunch of different things and played well at those positions. So yeah, versatility is the most important thing as a backup to your offensive lineman, and he has that. So
100%. He's one of those guys who can play just about any position. Obviously, he plays the interior better, but I believe there was a time where he played a little bit of outside, if I'm not mistaken. But he's also, like, with the Falcons' depth on the O-line, it's the perfect situation for him to come in, learn from those experienced guys who have been in the system for a while.
Yeah, I think the 8 that you're going to go into, an active day with, it will be Matthews, Bergeron, Dahlman, Lindstrom, McGarry, and then you'll have probably Hennessy, Gwyn, and Mayfield. Is how I kind of see that shaping up. And if Gwyn's on the practice squad, it'd be Joshua Miles.
Yeah, I kind of think they'll go with more of a one more tackle, because Mayfield, although he did play tackle in college, they tried to move him to guard. I don't know how much you can really count on him at this point. Like, I wouldn't be surprised if they went with Joshua Miles as kind of who I lean towards, being like the swing tackle at this point. And then,
well, I'm thinking in the event, well, yeah, you need a right tackle too, and because you got left tackle covered by Bergeron in the event of a Matthews injury, and then you slide Hennessy into left guard. But yeah, you might be right. Mayfield might be the odd guy out here.
Yeah.
And I think Mayfield should be the odd one out. I think maybe you keep him on the practice squad, considering he showed potential between college, and he was a relatively high draft pick, 3rd round, if I'm not mistaken, out of Michigan.
The one issue with the practice squad is you can have other teams steal players.
Yeah.
Right? As long as they're going to sign them to the active roster. So that's kind of like that's what you have to be really careful with the practice squad with, is if you put somebody on there that has that high potential and somebody can use them right now, they're going to do it.
I know there's like a rule where you can protect certain players per week. I think it's like 4 guys per week can be protected.
Yeah, that's a newer rule because of COVID. I can't remember exactly what it is now.
It's 16-player practice squad. There's a limit on vets. There's rule where you can protect certain guys so they can't be signed even though they're on the practice squad.
But I think, Jalen Mayfield, I think it's a bad rap. And I've said this before. He came in, played right tackle his entire career in college. They came in and said, you're going to be a left guard. They moved him to left guard for half of the camp. McGarry gets hurt. They throw him at right tackle for the rest of camp, for most of camp, actually. Then McGarry comes back and they throw him right back in at left guard and say, okay, you're the starting left guard. And it's just like,
see, that's going right back to what we were talking about with, I don't like switching left, right.
He was set up to fail. And then last year he hurts his back and he's out all year. I think he gets a bad rap, and I don't know. I mean, we don't know. Couple of things. Like, if his confidence is shot, then he's probably not going to make it back. But if it's not, I think there's a chance that he could be at a minimum serviceable player in the league. So we'll just have to kind of see what happens and see where he's at. And this is pretty much probably the make or break year, because if he's not good, then we've got all these other guys that are going to be taking his spot, and he might not make the team. But so that's my quick spiel on Mayfield.
1,000%. That is spot on right there. With that, y'all want to wrap up?
Yeah. So before we end, I'm going to ask you one more time, what would you give the Atlanta Falcons for a day 3 grade?
Again, I can see the direction. I think that this is the back end of the draft is where you make or break your draft. If you get guys that are going to be serviceable, that are going to make an impact on the roster on day 3, that's where the bulk of your roster is built anyways. And the 3 guys that they've got here on day 3, I think, say a lot about the work that they did this offseason and preparing and getting guys that have the potential to be an impact guy. I mean, we're talking about 4th round pick being a potential 1st round type talent. We're talking about, a guy that you took it at the end, the 7th round, that probably should have been closer to the 4th round. So I think the value's here. That's all good. But again, grade, man, is 4 years out. I mean, you can't even begin to grade these guys until you see how they've moved into the league and how they've adjusted. And, that's what you're trying to make, is you're trying to project based off of what you know and looking at what they did in college and projecting them forward. So I think overall they did well, but I can't put a grade on it. I can't do that with draft picks.
So I'm hearing
early on.
So I'm hearing an A+. Lock it, stamp it. That'll be the title of the episode. A+ from John Vogel. All right.
John Vogel says Falcons win the Super Bowl.
John,
no, I can't piss off Jason Kelsey. Okay, you can't do that.
John, thank you for coming on. We appreciate it as always. Anything you want to plug in? Anything you want to talk about that you got going on before we wrap up today?
I think honestly, I started off with that, because it was I think it was somewhat relevant. But yeah, no, I'm just excited about this year.
Where can we find your draft kit?
So I was trying to get it up on an online store, and I'm having issues with it because they're thinking that I'm trying to spam people because of what I'm putting up. So I'm working through that. But right now, you just follow me on Twitter at Draft Vogel, shoot me a DM, and I'll get you hooked up with it. $40 for access all year into it, and it's live, it's updated every single day. I'm working on it every single day, putting stuff in there. So yeah, best way to follow all my stuff is just get on Twitter, follow at Draft Vogel, and take it from there.
Awesome. Well, thank you for coming on, and Kyle and we'll get you back on here soon.
Sounds great, man. Thank you guys for having me again. Appreciate it.
It's always a pleasure to have you, and we hope you have a great rest of your day, and we hope all the listeners have a great day. So this has been Falcon Strip.
Rise up.
Again, this is Thon Ray. You guys can follow us at Falcons_drip on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. Please make sure you subscribe, follow, whatever you need to do to get the alert for our next episode. If you guys enjoyed today, please leave us a review. It always helps us grow. Until then, see you next time. Rise up.